Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian Sanabria, host of the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast and founder of the Defenders Initiative. Welcome to this webcast sponsored by Cyware. Joining me today is Kris Palmer, Director of Sales Engineering at Cyware. How you doing, Kris?
I'm doing great, Adrian. Thanks for having me, and look forward to being able to collaborate with everyone on and work with you as well. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about Cyware. We did do some prep for this, but I kind of intentionally didn't learn too much. So I'm going to be asking some honest questions to learn more about what you guys do. All right, and today we're talking about using threat intelligence to stay ahead of evolving cyber threats. And just a few notes to the audience before we jump into the conversation here. There are some blue bubbles down below there at the bottom of your screen. And some of those you can ask questions. There's a chat box there. The middle one is a Q&A. You can ask questions there. I'll be checking both the chat and the Q&A throughout the webinar. So feel free to ask your questions when they pop into your head and you want to ask them. Oftentimes it's best to answer those questions while we have the context of what we're talking about at the moment. So you don't have to wait until the end to drop your questions in there. You can drop them in as we go along. Also, the second to last button from the left is the handouts button, and we do have a PDF in there. Some of you joined a little early, and we uploaded that PDF just a few minutes before we started this webcast. So if you're getting an error or you see a URL and not a PDF, just hit refresh on your web browser. Just refresh this page, and you should be able to get that PDF. All right. And with that, and let us know if you have any issues there. We'll be checking out those comments. All right, so jumping into the conversation, Kris, for those who aren't familiar with Cyware, help me out, get me started here. Like, what do you guys do, and how does it fit into security operations and companies' workflows?
No, great question, Adrian. Appreciate it. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, so here at Cyware, we try to focus on being able to build fusion into SOCs or threat intelligence shops. It could be forensic shops, IR. I mean, we try to fuse a lot of components into helping create operational functions that might seem generic, but basically there's quite a bit we do. We have threat intelligence that we collect and manage, which I'll cover a lot about on that today. We also help kind of orchestrate and build the connectivity, the connective tissue between multiple workflows and ecosystems. We do things like, collect automatically intelligence matches and correlations and push that through, but also allow you to facilitate incident response through case management tools and various ways to collect and manage those incidents, as well as being able to build a full-fledged, shareable, what we like to call collective defense ecosystem to allow us to better be prepared to defend broadly. As we know, attackers seem to have the leg up. We try to find ways to help build a collective defense. And that's our overall strategy going out to other communities, other alliances, et cetera. So that's kind of a brief, generic overview. Hopefully that helps, but we'll dive deeper into some of that.
Yeah, and I think we'll need to like some of those, like in a broad sense, that makes sense, but it does lead to a lot of more specific questions. And maybe let's since threat intelligence, it sounds like, is at the center of this. I think it might help to define what we mean when we say threat intelligence here.
Absolutely, yeah. Threat intelligence. I know there's various different perspectives on what threat intelligence is. I think we look at it as a way to create and inform decision making, and you need the data set to do that, which is very important. But you have to trust the data. You have to ensure the data is working for you. You can manage it. I mean, it's temporal. There's a lot of things that you collect from data to really be able to proliferate an intelligence product, something that you feel comfortable delivering out to a stakeholder. So we try to do that. That's something that we take very seriously. We don't, a lot of times threat intelligence solutions will be additional buckets to collect just more data. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to expand upon it and actually drive an intelligence solution or inform a decision for IR, forensic, SOC, and various teams that need it. And that's our goal in a nutshell. But it's definitely multifarious perspective for sure.
Yeah, and then just kind of rounding out my understanding here, who is using Cyware? Is it the SOC analyst? Is it the detection engineering? Is it all of the above? And is this something that they use directly, like they log into a Cyware UI and they're looking at a Cyware interface, or is it something where Cyware kind of feeds into the existing tools that they already have, and they're using the intelligence within their tools, so it's kind of invisible behind the scenes?
I think that's a fantastic question. I would say all of the above and more.
Okay.
We literally do. Yeah, we SOC analysts leverage this because they're trying to determine if their tools that they're looking to detect on are as efficient and provide better visibility into their attack surface and landscape. We also work with Intel teams. We work with various teams that are specifically leveraging this tool for their intelligence operations. We also have teams that are, engineer programmatic teams that say, hey, I need to develop and kind of have a security operations or SecOps type of function where they're building programmatic functions to do things to automate their processes, leveraging APIs, leveraging some of our orchestration playbooks. And they don't ever log in. They just basically set and configure everything, and then it does its functions. And they do checks on logs, checks on runbooks, and things like that. So we can appease multiple teams to help them address a lot of their needs.
Yeah. All right. So from there, and as I said, if anybody has questions, feel free to drop them in as we're going through stuff today. Kevin, getting that error. If anybody's getting the error on the handout, just hit the refresh button on your browser and you should be good. You'll reconnect in a couple seconds. You won't lose too much of us talking about stuff. You won't get kicked out of the webcast at all. Just F5 or refresh on your browser and you should be able to get that PDF. All right. Kind of jumping into again, when talking about threat intelligence, where does all this stuff that I kind of think of Cyware as like a curator for things. So maybe let's talk a little bit about: are you guys generating this threat intelligence? Are you gathering it yourself? Are there other feeds that other organizations produce that you're pulling into the product? How does this the collection and curation of all this data happen?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that actually springboarded me into kind of what I want to show. And again, if we can get into it, or I can talk about it, but it's easiest. But basically, we collect from various sources, and I can talk through it.
If you think it would help to share your screen at any point, feel free to do that, because I think we get to a certain point talking about this, and people are like, "Okay, I'm trying to imagine it, but it's just going to be easier to see it." Right?
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's better for me to kind of dive into it this way. Can everybody see everything okay before I kind of get going?
I don't think you're sharing yet. I'm not seeing anything.
Okay. Oh, let me go back and try that. Oh, wait, it's not. Okay. There we go. How about that now?
Nope.
So not share? Is anyone else able to see? It shows.
I am seeing your share, Chris.
Okay.
Oh, good. Okay. Maybe it's just me that can't see it. That just the way that I'm logged on.
Okay.
I can see it.
You can't see it either?
There's others who can't see.
Yeah, Chris, I'd probably stop the share and restart it again just to check.
Okay. Let's try this again.
If the audience could let us know, because that's most important that you guys can see it. Let us know in the comments there if you can see when he's sharing his screen.
Yeah, Chris, I see your share.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Well, I think just to answer your question, Adrian, it's probably easier to share and show. And I have, again, a lot to kind of, I think this will answer a lot of questions, really diving in. And again, Adrian, feel free to kind of, as I'm going, if there's something that you want to hop into another question, I'm definitely able to do that. But basically, as you mentioned, and I think as I mentioned, to kind of, traditional threat intelligence tools and platforms are trying to collect intelligence. That's the first thing, is right. You got to get it in. And as you mentioned, Adrian, we're curating. Curating is absolutely a component that we do. We curate intelligence because we know SOC, IR, Intel programs and Intel teams, everyone's trying to find ways to get visibility into threats, right? They're collecting open source. They're out there looking for source feeds and in alliances and working various different ways to collect it. So what we do, this is literally the kind of the springboard in how we get intelligence into the platform. So literally, as you see here, first and foremost, we're STIX-based platform. So we focus on STIX as a format and a framework, and we support all the STIX versions. So everything that comes in, it automatically and natively goes to a STIX object, or it gets mapped directly to an object like an indicator, malware, vulnerability, etc. All the objects, the SDOs that are under the STIX framework. So that's the very first thing we do, and that allows us to be very surgical and seamless in how we structure intelligence, and then that facilitates everything else we do in the platform. But from there, we collect things like, we have a Cyware threat feed, which is open source, and just to look at this, so you can see there's a varying amount of sources. So these are just some that you might see: ThreatFox, Malware, Bazaar, Project Honeypot. There's a ton of these. Okay, these are more open source driven. You can enable or disable as you see fit. And then there's also things like webhooks. So we can set up a webhook to collect from the Slacks or any type of API-enabled hook that you want to bring into the platform for us to curate and do analysis on. There's also things like community feeds. It could be a DHS feed. It could be some other community-driven feed that you have, ACD, etc. I mean, various places that you want to bring intelligence in. It could be system feeds. It can be open source feeds again. We also collect from varying APIs. I mean, you might see a lot of these different logos here. We collect from a host of various different API sources. And we can go all the way down. I mean, I won't bore you with this, but basically, if you've got access to some of these APIs and keys and you've got premium feeds, we can bring those in. Again, you can bring in open source feeds. It could be APIs or things that you developed internally. It just requires you popping that key into the platform, and we can set that up. There's also all the alliances and sharing alliances. So, I mean, some people on the call might be a part of some of these. Maybe they're not. Maybe there's some other more homegrown alliances. The net is that we are very much a native to bringing in those multi-level collaborative feeds from alliances that you trust and that you share intelligence with. So those are easy enablements. We bring those in as well. A lot of times RSS is a big one, Feedly is a big one, or US Service, CISA, TweetFeed. There's a ton of different places that you want to collect because you trust that particular source over other native intelligence sources. That's fine too. Those are RSS feeds can be brought in, and we can start collecting and analyzing and normalizing that data as well. To include inboxes, mailboxes. We'll talk a little bit about our threat mailbox, but if you've got issues with spamming or phishing or just want to bring in an inbox to have us collect the intel, pull out attachments, extract indicators, parse it, and do all that stuff, we can bring in inboxes, multiple inboxes as you see fit to collect intelligence from, to include the web scrapers of the world. So maybe you're scraping from, SSL, BL, or abuse.ch, or Tor projects, or various places to scrape intelligence and bring it in. That's another way to do it. And as I mentioned, webhooks are always in there as well. You can bring in webhooks. There's another way to do this too, and I'm not even finished with all the ways you can do this, but I want to make sure I'm very clear. Not only just setting up automatic APIs to do it, you can say, hey, I got a file because my SOC or forensics teams, got a report and there's some indicators in there, or our collect from a subscription. I want to drop that file in here. You can do that in PDFs or native for us, or CSVs or doc files, etc. Bring those in. We can actually start the extraction process, and then from there, structure it to STIX. So all the indicators will be structured and mapped. And then from there, you can create an intelligence import job, which will actually feed that intelligence directly into the platform for analysis. Another way to do it, maybe you got free text. Maybe you got a 123.22.44.55 IP. Drop it in here. That's fine. You can do that as many rows as you want there. You can add, URLs that you want to import from, just pull that URL that has some additional data that we can pull into the platform. The point of it is there's various ways to get intelligence in, and that's very important here because it requires you getting what you want into the platform so that we can do the magic of structuring, normalizing, curating, analyzing that, and creating those Intel products, as mentioned by Adrian before, not just really being in another Intel repo, but trying to create
it's great because there's so many crazy ways that people get intel. I remember back in the day, the FBI would just send us a bunch of IP addresses in a email, and somebody would just copy and paste that, or forward the email to the firewall admin or something like that for us to block stuff. But yeah, you get it in all kinds of crazy forms, right?
All kind of forms, yeah. And that's the beauty of us being able to create a format of STIX or framework that we know is a shareable framework, or should be widely adopted in the Intel community, of course, and other industries. But that net allows us to make easy import, export. We even have taxi services. So for taxi servers, we have an embedded subscriber, so we can set up subscribers to push to taxi servers. We can do a lot of things to get the intelligence in and out the way you need it, normalized and structured. And of course, again, you don't have to be in the platform. If as I go through this in the UI to analyze it, it can be pushed directly to those tools, the Splunks, the Elastics, the data analytic tools, the EDRs, the firewalls, you name it. Push it there. Allow the system to securely and operationally function for you, and you not have to function for the system. It'll do the work for you and get it to those places in the way you want it. If that makes sense.
Right. So you're not just ingesting the data, but like looking at this screen, you're also passing it on to other systems as well, right?
You got it. Yeah. If you've got orchestration tools, again, I showed some of the SIM tools. It could be network security. I mean, there's a host of things. And by the way, this is not all we have here. These are just some examples in our demo environment. But the net is you can literally go in here and you can say, hey, I've got SentinelOne, or I've got product X. Okay, cool. This has got some API information. Can we go pull it and grab it and push it? It's that simple. We can actually create the integration very easily. And of course, having ways to have integrators or connectivity programmatically out, we can do that. And of course, we have a full SecOps kind of orchestrated function we call Orchestrate that allows us to build integrations. I think we have over 500 integrated tools and actions. So not only saying, hey, there's integration, there's actions that allow you to do things when it gets there. And of course, there's ways to be custom there as well. So it's not just on our default actions. There's actions that you can bring to the table that you work on in your workflows based on our orchestration ecosystem that's built into this platform. So absolutely, there's various things. So I can keep moving, but there's some other things I want to kind of walk through here just to show you some things. Not only do we get intelligence into the platform, one of the key things that analysts do and SOC teams do, they look to enrich things, right? Because once they get it in, they're like, hey, I've got the intelligence in my own systems and tools, but what can you do for me to show me that this is more, contextually rich, or there's things that I can leverage based on the community and host of intelligence that you're collecting from, and you can go on and on there, but you can create what we call enrichment policies. So you can manually enrich things as you see fit, but maybe you say, hey, you know what, I want to create an enrichment policy. And this is an example when I just created, today, I may want to enrich domains that are coming in, because maybe domains that I see coming from a particular source, like Team Cymru, US Cert, and there could be, it could be a ton of other tools, that you have, Feedly, etc. I want to make sure that I enrich it with domain tools, VirusTotal, Mandiant, and of course, I want to make it a higher priority. And every time these happen, I want to make sure this automatically gets enriched. So I'm not just trusting what that particular intel finding or detection was today. I want to make sure that I'm getting up to the minute verdicts from these tools to determine how threatening, how malicious these really are. Because we know how temporal intel is. It's hot today and cold tomorrow. We want to make sure that we're enriching and creating the most efficient footprint or view of this indicator and set of indicators by automating the enrichment by a policy based on what you think you deem as a priority. Because maybe IP addresses aren't, maybe domains are, maybe hashes, maybe URLs, you name it. You can create as many policies as you want here. These are some other examples, but it gives you a way to start being able to determine and operationally drive how your intelligence comes into the system and how it goes out to the tools that matter most to you. So I'll continue there. This is enrichment management. Really helps you understand how to enrich object types that are coming in from your sources. One of the things about threat intelligence, platform solutions, things that we've done over the past, and I've been in this industry over probably close to 2 decades now doing intelligence work. And one of the things I think that gets missed is, a lot of times we slap some machine learning or we try to find ways to be efficient from a collective analysis of multiple sources of intelligence. And we say, hey, this is what we think it should be based on data that's being trained and trying to provide it out to you. That's great, right? Because we know threat intelligence is a big data problem today. But one thing we're doing here, and I really, really love this feature, is something it allows you to say, hey, I can take control back on 3 core elements of how intelligence comes into the platform. And this is called our risk score engine. This is very, very, I mean, I think it's game changing in a lot of ways, because what this allows you to do is now truly unpack the intelligence and create a profile based on weights that you see fit for your sources. So what that means is everything goes up to 100%. So you can break down 3 components: the source score, enrichment score, as I showed you with enrichment policies, and attributes. Attributes is kind of the secret weapon or game changer here, and it meets a ton of use cases. I could probably talk to about 5 or 6 use cases and spend the rest of the hour on just this alone, but I won't, because obviously there's other things to show. But really, the source score is basically looking at those sources and saying, okay, hey, you know what, miner looks, and maybe you're doing something with an RSS feed like Mandate. You want it to be 100% of the 70% that comes in. So you're starting to determine percentage weights on all your sources: Flashpoint, miscellaneous, NVD, FSI. It doesn't matter what it is, right? You can determine the percentage weight on the source score so that when it comes in, based on your intelligence program, not someone else's, you can determine how you want this particular source to be weighted from a particular external source, right? But not only that, I want to also include maybe say 10% of enrichment scores, because I'm using Alien Vault, I'm using domain tools, I'm using Exploit DB, and a ton of other Shodan. I mean, there's a ton of things here. Virus total. I want to determine, when I get an enrichment verdict, that percentage of this particular tool, because maybe I use VulnCheck, maybe I use Mandiant more than I use others, and I want to trust those weights over those verdicts because it fits my ecosystem and workflow easily versus some other enrichment tool. You can do that.
So question here, Kris. Like, why would I give VulnCheck 100% and CV details 50%? Like what are the things? What are the reasons I would change the weights of these?
Yeah, great question. The reason really, again, is what's happened in the past is a lot of threat intelligence providers and solutions have basically made assumptions and have put too much trust in determining how you as an organization work, right? Everyone has a bit of a different flow based on their challenges and what they're looking to conceal for risk and try to safeguard and put policies in place for that, right? And so every tool has a certain expertise, or it has a certain perspective. And so VulnCheck here, I'm using this as an example. We've kind of pre-configured these. This might not work for me. Maybe this doesn't. Maybe I want to say, you know what? I'm going to drop this down. That's not great. But I'll tell you what, Mandiant, it's 100. In NVD's 100. Maybe I want to go with gray noise. I want to drop gray noise up because gray noise, we use it, we trust it up to 100, right? I can start triggering, configuring the levers here to create a percentage weight. Again, the weight of how I want this to influence the overall risk score. Because again, it's 100%. So this is 10% of 100%, right? And so this is based on the enrichment. Virus total. Maybe I think virus total is too low. 75. Okay, I want to start doing this. This gives you control. This is something that I have not seen in tools to allow me to fully control every enrichment. And this is not just, again, the best part of this gets into the attributes. Because this is the game changer. Because now a lot of times I've heard in the industry, they say, oh, this is great. But hey, I've got threat actors, right? So I'm tracking APT, you call it a number, 32, we'll say, right? APT 32 has been targeting us. We're in a certain industry. And I see indicators coming in from X source. But guess what? Those indicators they're not categorized for risk to the level that I need it to be. So now I need that to change. So let me go here and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to look for, I'm just going to use example. I could, type in here, but I'll just say Clock, right? I'm going to use Clock ransomware as an example. Clock ransomware is a threat actor. This family's been, attacking us. And I want now, every time there's a Clock ransomware indicator that's related to Clock, like so an IP address is related to Clock, the IP address may be too low, but I'm tracking Clock. So to me, it's higher. I need this to be a priority for me. And so I can do this over and over. I can create multiple families here. It's not just one or two. right? Malware can be the same thing. Vulnerabilities, let's look at vulnerabilities. So maybe I want to go to a CVE, like CVE something, and there's a hot CVE that's out there, right? And I want to start tracking this hot CVE, because every time I see in this relation to an actor or a relation to an attack pattern or an identity, you name it, a country, there's times where there's a lot of geopolitical fighting. Let's say Ukraine and Russia, right? Maybe there's things coming from Ukraine and Russia, and I want to start tracking indicators coming from a particular geo because those are more threatening today, and maybe in a month they're not. I can start to really identify threats based on attributes, based on how I want to weigh those threats coming in to create a risk that meets my needs at any given time. It's a game changer.
Yeah. So just to make sure I'm understanding this, maybe there's threats I absolutely don't want to miss, and say gray noise, they nail it every time, like very very accurate stuff I get from gray noise. So to
Sure.
make sure I don't miss anything clop related, that gray noise maybe sees happening in the wild. Because there's so much threat intelligence data, there can be so much noise in here. Like I'm tuning what floats to the top, right? Is that what I'm doing here?
Yeah, you're trying to prioritize, and that's the key. Prioritize and trust, right? Because oftentimes in threat intelligence, again, by sources you're collecting, you may find that you're not seeing the source that is relevant to you at the trust level and risk score that you think it should be, right? And so now I need to say, hey, this is my profile, this is my formula for prioritizing my risk based on creating custom attributes to add to the scoring engine, and also how I enrich everything. I want to make sure that I'm not leaving it to a system that doesn't know how I work and doesn't know how we prioritize. I want to be able to have more control here. And this is something that hasn't happened in a lot of tools. And oh, by the way, I can run a simulator and say, okay, because I don't know how to configure the formula. I want to run a simulator and start inputting certain values based on weights, and I want to come up with the perfect score. So this can tell me how to get to that conclusion based on adding values. These are decay, which also I didn't talk about the last reported days, but there's also decay windows. So we have decays that decay meaning an IP address will no longer be relevant anymore, or it's no longer malicious. The point is I can add all that into here, create a run score simulator score that fits to me based on any type of indicator, and now I have the ability to dictate how my risks are feeding the system, which again, it's around trusting the risk scores, because a lot of times there's so much intel, you can't always trust it by pushing it to something and it creating its own sort of formula. You want to have more control and access into how that gets scored.
Yeah, and we've seen that 90 days might even be long for an IP address. As quickly as, especially like AWS and places like that, as quickly as stuff gets taken down and those IP addresses get reused. Sure, last week that IP address was a threat actor. This week it's a flower delivery company, right?
That's exactly right. Absolutely. I mean, again, I've been doing this a while, and having the ability to be able to say, hey, I have that. I can at ad hoc at any given point, or a campaign or an incident occurs, I can start to make sure what my risk is, which again is probably the heartbeat of a threat intel platform. What is the risk? How do I know how to prioritize? How do I operationalize the risk based on what I need in my tools, like my data analytic tools or my endpoint tools, to trust the detections and the rules and policies, right? I need to make sure this is correct. Otherwise, junk in, junk out. And we don't want that. So we definitely want to make sure this is set appropriately. And this is something that we've released recently, and it's really something I think that will change how we do threat intelligence management, for sure.
Now, say I have no idea what to do with any of these sliders here, right? And I don't want to get tied up in like second guessing, should STIX be 70% or 100%? Are there some defaults here? Is this something where you guys can like give me some reasonable defaults, help me, maybe I don't even want to mess with this at all. Like what can you do for me there?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can provide defaults that we think generally, because we don't want to be a threat intel critic. We never want to do that. But generally what we could provide as kind of a starting place, we usually recommend that. And then, of course, we can work in tune as you start to see intelligence. It's not something that is a set it and forget it or maybe a static sort of enablement. You can go in and dynamically change this as you see fit. And we help. We have, we understand the capability and how it works. We can help make sure what your interpretation is for a STIX or RSS feed is the output of that risk score that you want. And so we definitely help consult and kind of guide our teams with this. And again, it's been really successful because it's actually not as intimidating as it might seem. It's just giving the teams back a bit more control and access into what used to be a closed algorithm and allow them to be more flexible there. Yeah.
And I love that, because there are a lot of closed algorithms where you're like, why is this like it is, and why am I not seeing the things that matter? So it's great that you can jump in there and play with the sliders and customize that. Just to give you a time check, Kris, we're about 50% of the way through.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to quickly pop in here. I'm just going to go through a few things. I'll speed up a little bit here, but thank you so much, Adrian. This is kind of getting into now the actual dashboard here. A lot of the things I showed you were more administratively getting things set up for the platform, how it works. This is kind of showing you the outputs, right? And so dashboards, there's a lot of dashboards and tools. We have dashboards as well. The net is really trying to bubble up information based on criteria you want. Maybe it's you're big on MITRE attack framework and you want to track how that relates to log data or threat actors or just TTPs and et cetera, and seeing how the data that's coming in that you've seen we've shown you how the data comes in, how it relates to mapping to MITRE, which we auto do. We map it based on attack patterns, and those attack patterns map to the TTPs. So you can see the performance there. You can also see, which I'll pop into here, the rules, so rules are a big deal. And this is how we take the next step from just being a presenter of intelligence and curator of intelligence to being able to operationalize intelligence by allowing you to build rules. And as you can see, rules going into things like maybe a Splunk hunt. This is not always shown, but a Splunk hunting use case. Or maybe I'm looking for updating a SIM tool or an EDR, but looking at the performance based on the indicators, vulnerabilities, infrastructure, various STIX objects, even domain objects here, seeing kind of what we see, what's been processed by rules, how many have been processed when you set up a rule, and I'll show you rules here shortly, the performance, and just some other process rule actions, things that we trigger playbooks, update custom scores, or update lookup tables, a bunch of stuff that can happen here. So the rules are going to show you how you can manage and look at how things are being managed and actions are being taken and automation is being facilitated. And then, of course, you can look at some things like feed ROI. Like, what are these feeds doing for me? Obviously, I don't know that until I get data in here. And so I can start looking at maybe this DHS, AIS feed is, I'm seeing, high risk scores, 804 indicators over a given period that are coming in. And I can see them broken down by my risk scoring systems here or early adopters. Like, who am I seeing from my risk and my sources, the early adopters of indicators? Maybe, the CISA medical advisories or VulnCheck or the threat feeds. I'm seeing who's reporting the earliest and giving us a bit more insight and visibility into those indicators. To include, which I really love, is seeing where do we see high duplication and overlap. I want to see what feeds do I have or heavy overlappers. And if I see things like Flashpoint, which has a lot of exclusive feeds, and then I see Mandiant maybe has a ton of overlap. Maybe this one isn't serving me that well because I've got other feeds that are covering it. So it gives you a way to start understanding your profile because, again, it's a big data problem. You've got multiple sources. You need to understand where you're getting the best bang for your buck and that return of investment from those threat feeds. And you can see it cumulatively in widgets that we've created. So you might say, okay, cool, this is great. There's a ton of stuff it's showing, but I have a different use case. Oh, man, great. You can create your own dashboard. You can call it, my dashboard. If I can spell here, my dashboard. And basically, I can create a description, create a basic layout. I can create a standard stationary dashboard. And then from there, I can just start building. And of course, how I build on these are based on things like preset filters that are already here or saved searches. So I can create this, high risk C2 infrastructure indicator detection, which is basically a CQL or a query. And I can populate that. I can create a ton of different ones here based on various other searches that are here, or I can create my own custom widget. Creating a widget's not difficult. You have the whole framework to do such and build it out. So I won't go too much into this because, for time. But the net is, just think of this as a way to create a full-fledged dashboard, custom-made, based on queries that from your intelligence that you want to see in a bucket format. Maybe it's an executive summary, etc. So you can present that every day and monitor it based on the widget details, the parameters that you want, and all that stuff. So dashboards are fully customizable, and it's not something that is just static to what you see in the platform, but you can fully build your own.
Right. Like one use case I can think of is like we were seeing a lot of grocery stores, a lot of retail in the UK getting hit. And there was intelligence that they were going to start coming after the U.S. After a bit, after they, I don't know how much success, how many ransoms got paid out of that, but we saw a lot of stores that were down for a while. I forget if it was grocery or just general retail stores, because I'm just not familiar with the UK retail landscape. But we had some great idea, like okay, we knew who the threat actor was. I want to say it was related to Dragon Force, which I saw up in your screen there a few minutes ago, and literally, like, U.S. retailers had an opportunity to come into a tool like this and tune it to specifically look for a threat actor they know there's a high likelihood they're about to start coming after them.
You bet. You bet. Absolutely. I mean, you can get as granular as creating an entire dashboard based on industry findings and detections. Like you mentioned, it can be retail, it can be a threat actor, looking at the activities that we see and breaking out attributes from those. Maybe it's this actor, has affiliations to other controller infrastructure that is sold, and they're leveraging it kind of in attacks. And you want to find out how often that's happening, what are some of the targets and victims. You can get really granular. The key is we break out the data into attributes, and those attributes can be operationally used to create filterable and queryable components of results, whether it be a widget, whether it be a rule, whether it be an investigation. There's reports. There's a ton of things you can do with it. And so that's where this gets really fun, and a lot of our teams that use this really kind of, the ideas are endless because they come up with various things from the data set to allow us to be able to really materialize into a product. And that's what you see here. So very good point there, Adrian. And again, that's something we do quite often. Moving forward real quickly on a few other things. We have a threat mailbox, as I mentioned. So threat mailbox, you can set up multiple mailboxes and start basically bringing in intelligence based on indicators. It could be phishing. It could be just reports. Maybe you subscribe to a report from a various provider and you want that report to publish into the platform. You can push it directly in. We'll extract all the indicators and allow you, even allow indicators would be whitelisting ones that we see in reports. Of course, you don't want those going into the system.
Yeah, so when you say inbox, you literally mean like email, like a subscribe to a mailing list or something like that. Can this be? I imagine you can pull in RSS feeds as well. I think I've seen that elsewhere here.
Yeah, RSS feeds will be more on the integration management. So it's just basically plugging it into kind of the API side of things. But this is more of an inbox. This is like taking your inbox. We'll take the details, and if you've got one that you've got provider reports coming to, they can just publish that, and we can handle multiple inboxes. You can add new accounts, and we can basically publish those here, and you can start feeding intelligence from those inboxes directly.
And so would I pair this with my actual inbox, or would I subscribe to these things using like an auto-generated Cyware email address?
You use your actionables, yeah. You would bring in your inboxes that you have coming into your organization. You could publish that as another feeder into the platform.
Okay.
Yeah, no, great questions. Great questions. So the next kind of place you pop into, now that we've seen some of the kind of front end, is really getting into the data, right? And the data is under this place called threat data here. Threat data, you can do a lot of things with. I mean, we go back to save searches, as I mentioned earlier with dashboards, those save searches. Any query you create, you can save it to a search. And then from there, you have a building block to build a dashboard, build various other components in the platform based on these save searches. They basically follow you on the platform. So you can do that, or I can switch to just easily filtering things by tons of objects. These are all the STIX objects, so I can go and look at Maybe I want to look at all the vulnerabilities. So I can go click on vulnerabilities here, and it'll bring up all the vulnerabilities that we have from various sources. I can go to malware. I can go to various ways here. I can look at sources, all my sources coming in here. And as you can see, you can break down this by anything, tags. We can even get into not just the actions, because there's actions that we create based on things that are triggered out from this platform. There's also, I'm scrolling all the way down, there's a ton of things here like enrichment verdicts. The sightings. So sightings are correlated matches that happen from intelligence that you fed into the platform that might match with a Splunk event log or an Elastic log or maybe a policy on your IPSs. It doesn't matter. A sighting that you've seen actually happen, those observed sightings or locations, all that, or has a sighting, you can filter on. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get into the data to look for things that you want to pop into very easily, right? So let's pick on this IP address.
Can you expand sightings a little bit and see what some of those look like?
Yeah, so the sightings, I don't actually have any sightings in this platform.
Oh, okay.
But I'll show you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll show you here.
That would be some kind of evidence of something getting exploited in the wild or something like that, I imagine?
Yeah, it'd basically be a match to the intelligence. So it's some kind of indicator of exploit or warning or some hit in your platform that is alerted on, that you want to push back into the platform because those have been confirmed, right? Those are not just, hey, I'm tracking the intelligence IP
not
address.
theoretical.
Yeah, absolutely. So at that point is, this is an IP address I'm going to pre-stage here. You can kind of pop into. So I'll pick on it here. I'm going to scroll over here. So this IP address is 39.105.31.193 IP address. The risk score right now is at a 50, right? This is what's happened based on, as we showed you, the risk score engine, and it takes into account a lot of factors. But you'll see other sources like Team Cymru, Mandiant, Recorded Future, Flashpoint, and other source confidence scores, all at different rates here. There's a ton of things like tags, so we do collect all the contextual associated components of this indicator. It could be things like TTPs reminder. It could be obviously, threat actors, all the enrichments here. So we see verdicts, like non-malicious, virus total sees malicious, and a lot of relationships here. So as I go through this IP address, I'm going to go through and I'm going to see what everyone thinks about it, right? So Mandiant's got their own descriptions. Recorded Future has their own descriptions about it. I'll skip to Team Cymru. Team Cymru has it as well. So I can see things like, this is a controller IP address. So this is being leveraged by a malware family because it's a controller IP address. We see geolocations like China. We see things like phishing domains and phishing instances that have been observed here. And things like phishing instances, seen on the same /24 address. And just a ton of things like beaconing, infrastructure, ports, and other insightful information. All this is here. And you might say, oh, this is interesting. I want to start watching this. So you can create watch list and watch this IP address or any other keyword that relates to it and start allowing the platform to automatically trigger anytime it sees this IP address or anything that's related, and provide you the occurrences and alerts every time there's a trigger of this IP address. So hey, it's been seen again, it's updated, or maybe there's another threat that's associated, etc. There's also relationships. Relationships matter, right? So you want to know what is it related to based on other indicator or objects in the platform, like attack patterns, malwares, like Cyware. There's other attack patterns in infrastructure. So you see all that here. I can even visualize it here. I'm sure this will blow up, but I'll show you this in a different light. I'll come back to this in just a second. But then there's all the enrichment stuff that we showed you. So you can actually go manually enrich any one of these. I can go enrich it by Alien Vault. I've already seen four other enrichment tools that have actually enriched this. And of course, as I mentioned, sightings, if we had them, they would be here. You would see sightings in here, and those would be pushed in here, of course. There's a bunch of other things like actions. So one of the things we want to do is take action on things. Not just adding it to a watch list. Maybe I want to create some kind of incident response ticket for this. I can create what we call sifter or an incident response ticket. I can also do things like add relationships. And there's a host of other things, triggering playbooks. So let me pop into a few things. I know I'm getting close to time here. I'm going to show you kind of how we start to take this from basically looking at this indicator from a static perspective into looking at how I can, one, investigate it, and then start creating rules. So as you see here, this is that IP address here. There's a lot of relationships. There's attack patterns here. I see it loaded next. It's associated to a Cobalt Strike stager. infrastructure. I see, other hash information, and there's a ton of stuff here. I can go into it and right click and do a bunch of things like, analyze this again. I can run a rule. I can start doing things directly from the investigative canvas here that allows you to really start to visually analyze it. I can create filters and look at things. I can add nodes. I can do nodal analysis here. There's a ton of things I can do when looking at all this information. Maybe I want to look at this Bumblebee because I see Bumblebees associated, and I want to. I know that there's some associations here with Bumblebee, and I may want to actually create a relationship. So I can do that real easily. I can come in here and I can create this relationship directly to Cobalt Strike, and I can add relationship information here and start creating intelligence. So not only am I seeing it, I'm creating relationships based on what I'm seeing. So I can save this, and now I've created a relationship between this Bumblebee, which is a loader, and we've seen it have relationships to Cobalt Strike. So now I'm starting to create a new intel profile. Not the stuff that's come in, but this is stuff that I've analyzed, and I want to start creating other relationships based on things I didn't know about or I didn't have visual representation by way of investigating other nodal threats that we see associated to this indicator. So one indicator and others related. Very easy, right? And so now once I do that, I want to now start creating operational ways to let the system work for me, because obviously I can go search things and do it manually, but you guys don't have time for that. You want to start building ways to allow the system to work for you. So this is one that I created called phishing email triage and hunting. So I could say, maybe I want to leverage my mailbox or inbox because I know I'm getting a ton of, suspicious inbox emails there, or maybe there are things that I want to analyze from this mailbox. There's three components here. There's a source.
Maybe you have a mailbox that people just forward phishes to, right?
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the layout is really the source, condition, and action. So every time something comes into this mailbox, and I can create other conditions, by the way, if I wanted to, I can make this more granular, but for the sake of time, I'll show you. This inbox will push any indicator that's a hash type, because maybe I know there's attachments or hashes coming from these inboxes that I want to track. And if they're greater than 80, because as it's analyzing these hashes, if I see a threat that's greater than 80, now I want to skip over this and I want to update tags, because I know I want to create tag updates. And every time I want to update the tag, I want to put things in here like phishing, spear phishing, email compromise, and this hunt tag is a user tag. So this will notify my hunt teams, who are leveraging Splunk in this case, to hunt for anytime there's a phishing indicator match or threat that we're tracking in our data analytic tools like a Splunk or a SIM. My hunt team knows that this is something you guys have to triage or start to analyze based on this tag. But not only that, I want to send emails and notify other people, because also not only when they see this, I don't want people who don't have access or need to know about this not to be informed. I want them to be informed every time this triggers. And really more widely, I want to trigger a playbook using my XOR Cortex to push out actions into a playbook that might be going to analyze, certain indicators, start being able to influence tools like my Microsoft AD or my other tools, and start really trying to create an actionable event on those systems because it's met a bunch of criteria. And then also I can create what we call a collaborative alert, which is something that we use in our Collaborate tool to collaborate with others. Maybe I have ISACs that need to know about this particular phishing behavior. I want to push it out to those teams because I'm communicating with FS ISAC or H ISAC or R ISAC. It doesn't matter. I can create a way to an alert there, and I can also publish to a collection. A collection is basically a place that can be picked up, and this could be like a JSON blob that's picked up, and you can actually go bring it into a tool and have that intelligence there and that tool native to every detection. So now you've done 4 or 5 actions based on just one criteria, looking for this particular information, pushing out to various places. So this is starting to become more operable and operationally efficient using our platform.
Yeah, it seems like you can really leverage this to design something that's less noisy for the SOC. Kind of control. And prioritize the stuff that they're looking at, that they're investigating every day.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This system makes you more scalable. It creates a force multiplier. It creates actionable actions in those tools in an automated fashion. You can do it even manually if you don't want to do it automatically. There's just flexibility here to do that. And so building rules helps you kind of get more intuitive. And just to show you kind of downline, because this is kind of the first step into the orchestration, just kind of show you a little bit about what that looks like. I know this looks kind of wonky and confusing, but this spear phishing playbook could do a lot of things like extract email IDs and IPs. It could do things like influence Microsoft Entra IDs from AD, as I mentioned. It starts to really operate for you as you're communicating with users, creating incidents. I mean, you see this here. Why have analysts doing all this work when you can start building orchestrated ways to do it based on just seeing one thing that is coming from your inboxes and ensuring that it triggers a condition match, and then from there you build an ecosystem of spear phishing playbooks and actions to help you be more efficient as a SOC.
And do you have some, so I don't have to start from scratch? Are there some templates for these playbooks?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens with these playbooks, typically there's actions, and so we can get into it. I know I have limited time here, but basically what you would do is you would come in and download the apps. The apps have, you name the apps with a ton of different apps here, as I mentioned. So these actions are pretty much there for you. So it helps you start with kind of what the action is and templates that you want to do from any one of these tools. And then from there, we can help kind of tweak it, customize it. You might have people that are really good with code or not. It's very low code, but if you want to get more flexible and drop some Python in there, you can do that. Or we can help help enrich the template that you need for your workflow. So it's not as intimidating as it could be, but it's something that we can help guide you through. Great. There's one other thing I want to get into before we kind of turn it over to you guys, and I'd be remiss without walking into it. And this is kind of getting into more modern ways to have AI involved, and we call this quarterback. And so, a lot of times you don't want to work through, trying to leverage CQL.
That's literally the name of the product, right? Cyware Quarterback.
Yeah, this is the product. So think of it as an AI assistant and a security assistant to help you. So I can easily come in here and I can create a situation where I might want to enter a prompt. So let me see if I can enter this prompt here. So I can start off with this prompt, write a scenario that's where a threat actor APT exploits an unmitigated CV in order to attack U.S. agency, include all the pertinent information. So as it's going through, I'll kind of walk you through what that looks like. So I've kind of preloaded this. So what will happen is as it loads, it'll come back with this scenario. So it starts to inform you. And again, this is one of many things. By the way, there's also those apps that I showed you from Orchestrate that not only once it finds maybe the scenario or finds a particular component that you might want to take action on, there are apps configured. So you can actually start influencing Microsoft Defender. You can influence Okta based on certain things that you might want it to do in your workflow for these apps. So this is kind of getting into, again, more operationalizing the QB AI that you find, okay? So this is looking for that, and I can continue on with the prompts. Let me show you what this looks like more broadly. So as I go through this is kind of what you see, and then I can go and say, hey, great, now I want to suggest a YAML rule that will simulate, Caldera. Okay, cool, it'll do that, and it'll provide YAML rules from a Caldera simulation, and it provide that back to you. And again, things you can tweak and gives you explanations like, persistence, privilege escalations, and that whole kind of walkthrough there. And maybe I want to, use this below sample as an example. And so I use this sample, it'll go and find it. As you can see, this is AI working with you, right? Because we don't have all the into this information.
Kris,
it's going to start doing this. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking, this would be a great tool to help in the midst of if you're doing a tabletop or something like that. You can ask this tool, okay, what happens next? As you're going through the tabletop, and it can generate because it knows the TTPs of the different actors, so it can give you some idea of, well, this is what we've seen them do in the past. This is what they're good at, so it's got some idea of what they might do in the future.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're having an assistant. Think of it as it's a virtualized threat intelligence assistant working with you, giving you information back, not only from the platform, but also from intelligence that it's been able to learn from. Of course, as I've gathered, again, run key information from this YAML rule. I can say, hey, summarize this for me, because maybe I have to send this up to executives, right? So I can start summarizing things. Yeah. I can create, incidents. So this is where it gets into actions, creating an incident, which would actually influence an incident. in our Respond platform or incidents. It could be ServiceNow if you've got it connected. You can start working to be actionable from AI directly by using natural processing language, right? In NLP, so you're not leveraging CQLs. It's you working with the platform, speaking in a natural way to influence the functions and actions in an operational manner. And so this is kind of our next stage, and I think this is where the industry should be going, and we're trying to kind of take the lead there. Any questions?
No,
I know this
awesome.
has been a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, if to the audience, if you do have any questions, we've got a couple minutes. We can maybe grab a couple. Be sure to get your questions in. Dan, I'm not sure what that question is. It looks like an emoji. Or sorry, Don, not Dan. Yeah, this is great stuff. So I know we've seen a lot of things here. I want to kind of wrap Kris on like, what would you recommend? Like, there's so much in this tool. Like, where do you get started? How do you? What are some of the pitfalls? How do you avoid just kind of getting lost in things, in all the things that this tool can do? What do you recommend people focus on?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It is, and we try to address a lot of different pain points, but I think we've done it in a way that's efficient. I think the way we look at it is one, intelligence, right? For intel teams, SOC teams, again, teams that are looking to curate intelligence. The key thing is understanding what you want from your profile of intelligence, right? Getting the intelligence in. Once you get the intelligence in, from that point, it's really looking at what our platform is doing. Again, taking the enrichments that you're seeing, kind of start there. Like it's not. We don't want to overwhelm people with knowing, all the nooks and crannies that this thing can do. It's really understanding how to analyze what your profile is. Whatever it is, maybe it's 2 sources, maybe it's 500. It doesn't matter. Knowing what that looks like, and yeah, I know. And again, I've talked to some teams with some pretty broad. They take everything, right? But I think really once you can see
it does sound like a bit of a pitfall, like trying to do too much all at once, right?
I think we see that more than we don't, and I think we're trying to provide a way to a step-by-step approach, having a STIX structured backbone, being able to understand your intelligence profile, know what the risks are, so being able to be configurable, and again, we help you that. And then from there, it's really reanalyzing and setting up the right amount of automation that you need. Rules are perfect because rules kind of get you into the next step of orchestration. You don't necessarily have to orchestrate, but the rules help you become more efficient because they force multiply. There are things that you're doing repetitively. Let the rules work with you. And again, we help you with that. We have training academies. We've got teams that help consult and guide you. This is not a kind of today drop off the solution and we leave, and we're with you the whole way. But I think that's a great question. Just kind of take it small and understand your Intel profile, and from there we can kind of guide you on the journey.
Excellent. Great stuff. Thanks again, Kris, for the great demo today and all the information, answering all my dumb questions as I watch you go through there. And I'm trying to catch up with. We didn't have anything like this back when I was chief incident handler on the enterprise side. So it's just it's so cool to see all this in one place and all the versatility with it.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Appreciate it again from a practitioner to practitioner. Yeah, I know the pain points, and I wish I could have used this as well. But I really appreciate you giving us the time to show it. And if anyone ever has questions, they can reach out to me directly or Cyware and the team. But we really appreciate the time today.
Yeah, and thanks again to Cyware for making this webcast possible. And thanks to the attendees for being here. And don't forget the handout. You can grab that. You can hit the handouts button there. If you want to learn more about the product here. So this will be on demand after we wrap up here. So if you have any colleagues that want to check it out, you can send it to them. And yeah, have a great day.
Thanks, guys.